everybody. I am here with MaryAnn McKibben Dana, who is many things. She's a pastor, an author, a speaker. But most importantly, for purposes of our conversation, she is the retreat leader for our fall pastors retreat coming up in October. This is not something that Pittsburgh Presbytery has done. In recent memory, we did it way back, but based on some of what you all told us as part of the landscape study process and the transition process, was you wanted us to focus more on opportunities for equipping and connecting with one another. And we thought pastors retreat sounds like the perfect way to do that. For those of you who know me that there is not a retreat that I don't enjoy. And so I've asked Marianne to have a brief conversation with me this morning and tell us a little bit more about her, so that as you contemplate whether that retreat's the right fit for you. Just as a reminder, it coincides with our Thursday Presbytery meeting anyway, so it's just a couple days in advance. So Marianne, thank you for joining me
Looking
and
forward to
welcome.
it. Thank you. Thank you. I love retreats as well. I just gobble them up. I worked with somebody early in ministry who said, they're not a retreat, they're an advance. You know, it just helps you level up, move
Yeah,
forward. Even if you're kind of unplugging from things, it's just a
yeah,
great thing to do for your own growth in ministry.
they
So.
they are. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I am coming to you this morning from Reston, Virginia, which is in the greater DC area, where we've lived for the past 22 years. I have three grown slash almost grown children and grew up in Texas, went to Rice University, went to Columbia Seminary, and have been here in National Capital. Greetings from your siblings in National Capital, and looking forward to being with you all in a few months.
Very good. So tell us a little bit about some of your experiences in ministries, like college you've been in, things you've done, etc.
Yes, right. So moved up to this area to take a call as an associate pastor, which I served kind of a mid-sized church for about 6 or 7 years, then moved into a solo pastor. I affectionately called Tiny Church. We had about 70 on the rolls, and so we were kind of that small and mighty sort of congregation. Still have so much affection for that size of church, the promises of that, and also the challenges. Then in 2015, my ministry took a different direction. I had written a book at that point and was being invited to speak about it in lead retreats and speaking events for different groups, and really was feeling God calling me to lean into that more. So from 2015 to about 2021, that was my full-time ministry, in addition to taking up ministry coaching, which I got trained as a coach in 2017, I believe it was. And since then, even up to now, have been working with pastors, sessions, even presbyteries sometimes on skill building, setting good strategic goals, all those good things that coaches help us come into better understanding of, and making those goals and things a reality. And then since 2021, I've been working part-time for Trinity Presbyterian in Herndon, Virginia, not far from where I live, where I do generalist kind of work. And it's nice to have a part-time call to provide a little stability for what I call the free-range side of my
Yeah,
ministry. So,
yeah,
which a lot of
yes,
pastors are in that reality, right? Kind of cobbling
yeah,
together lots of different pieces. So I can
yeah,
speak to that personally.
yeah. So part of what I really liked about kind of your background that I think makes you a really good retreat leader for this is like I've only ever served in large systems. I've only ever been an associate. You've kind of walked the large system and small system
Yes,
side.
right.
I think that's really important as a lot of our churches kind of change and transform.
Yeah,
We're finding more and more places where it's like the head of staff, what staff?
right.
Like the part-time custodian, the 12-hour a week church administrator, and the 10-hour week music person. So
Exactly.
I think it's helpful.
That's right.
So one of the things that I think, and I think I actually said this out loud at the Synod event that you led for us, is like I believe that cynicism is like the drug of the mainline church. Like when we get together, the more cynical we can be, the better, right?
Yeah.
And I hate it. So the question I ask everyone is, what is inspiring you in ministry right
Oh, wow. I think you put that so well, and I remember when you said that at that event, and could not agree more. And I think it's an endemic illness, not just in the church, but so in so much of our culture. There's kind of a sense that cynicism makes you more sophisticated, right? Because you're like looking at the the
Yeah.
the facts on the ground and how bleak they are, and if you have any kind of different orientation, you're just seen as naive. And I think what inspires me, it may sound cheesy and kind of simplistic, but just people who refuse to give into that, and who really embody what I think the claims of the gospel put on our lives, which is that we are called to be repairers of the breach. We are called to follow our sense of call, our sense of purpose, the ethic of what Jesus lays out in the gospel and sets us free to do, regardless of outcome. And I think there's something really, I mean, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and that is a big kind of sensibility in that story, the idea that we do what's right and we don't give up even when things seem really hard. And there's something really beautiful about that. And so helping people claim that story, not necessarily Lord of the Rings, and that's not your thing, although I think Tolkien was inspired by the gospel, but just the idea that Jesus calls us to love abundantly for as long as we can, in as many places as we can, and in as many ways as we can. So that inspires me, and seeing people do that in all kinds of different ways with not much budget, not many folks, all of those things kind of working against us. There's an in spite of that I find really inspiring and exciting.
Yeah, I love it. Last fall for our fall presbytery meeting, I my sermon was titled "Nevertheless," right? And I like named "This is true, this is true, and this is true, and nevertheless," right?
Yeah.
This is true, and this is true, and this is true, and nevertheless. And even this week, like children youth ministry has been my passion. I actually was called to that ministry prior to being called to ordination, and so I'm at camp this week, right? And our camp and conference centers used to be huge and host over 100 kids each week, and like this week we have our largest camp we've had since post COVID. Well, that's easy because post COVID the bottom number was zero, right? So
Yes.
so it's easy to say, hey, we've gone from that to 40.
Yeah.
And yet there's part of that says yes, and nevertheless these 40 kids still matter.
That's right.
And like, even though it's not 100, these 40 kids still matter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So as I mentioned, you led our Synod event, which I really enjoyed. Part of what I enjoyed was like they asked you to do the variety show, so you kind of did a little bit of everything. Tell us about some of your main interests in ministry, because they're not necessarily things that like prototypical pastors are like, oh yeah, like I'm really into preaching, and
Right.
for you that's not necessarily it. So tell us a
That's
little bit
right.
about your main interests.
Yes, right. Well, as I mentioned, I have written a number of books along the way, and I think the one that has kind of had the most staying power for me in terms of modeling for ministry is the work I did several years ago around improvisation and thinking about life as an improvisation as a spiritual practice. What do we do when life doesn't go according to plan? And just to your point, Brian, about where you are now with the camp, right? You have had to learn how to do camp ministry differently post-COVID with a smaller group that probably has implications for all kinds of things programmatically. And so many of us improvise without thinking about it. I mean, this conversation we're having is an improvisation. I don't know quite what you're going to say. You don't know quite what I'm going to say. We do that kind of work every day. And yet I think as Presbyterians, sometimes our decent and orderliness can help us feel a little more calcified, like we can't maybe move more flexibly in the world and respond. The basics of improv is responding to the world around you. And if you can't change it, even if you wouldn't have chosen it, and that's so much the reality for so many congregations, right? If only we could, have the abundant resources that we used to have. That's just not the reality anymore. And there's something to grieve there, and we do that work as well. But then now what? Again, that's the kind of what inspires me too, is people who find the will to keep going and to learn. And so that's a through line that whether I use the word improv or not when I'm talking with groups, I think a lot of the tools and methodologies that I find myself drawn to really have that improv thing at the bottom of it. And what I always like to tell people who get a little, I don't know if I can do that kind of work, is having done a lot of work around improv and taking classes and things like that, there is a structure to it. it's not a rigid structure, but I had a friend who I studied these things with, and she said structure creates safety, right? And so we need to find the right amount of boundary and structure and form to help us be flexible and creative, and that looks different in different places and for different people, but helping people figure out what that is really exciting to me as a coach, as a pastor. How do we move through this together? And so that's been a real inspiration for me.
Yeah. So I actually was thinking about this conversation on Monday. It's the first day of camp. Everything's supposed to go a certain way. And we had this line of intermittent thunderstorms that came through. And intermittent thunderstorms at camp are the worst because the kids are looking outside and we're like, we can't go to the pool. Like, what's
Right.
wrong with you? Right. And so
Yes.
I was thinking, I was like, yeah, this is a living example of improv.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
um, one of the things that I really appreciated at the Synod event you led was that you talked a little about a project on cultivated ministry. What I really appreciated was that, and this is always a level of vulnerability I appreciate in speakers, is when they're like, here's how I use this tool in my context,
Yeah.
which not everything comes up rosy, right? It was like, here, we're assessing a program that I am partially responsible for leading.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in cultivated ministry as a framework. Tell us a little bit more about that and kind of
Yes.
your experience with that and how you've seen congregations use it.
Yep. Cultivated ministry is a set of, it's kind of a set of tools, but I also think of it as kind of a sensibility, like a way, a lens for looking at ministry.
Yeah.
And it's a way of planning and evaluating ministry that goes beyond the traditional model of how many people came, how much did it cost, what kind of building use, I mean, that kind of attendance, buildings, and cash, right? ABC or
Yep.
buildings, bucks, and butts,
Bucks. Yep.
whatever we
Yep.
want to put it. And helps us go a lot deeper. I mean, that word cultivated, so it kind of has these earthy metaphors in it, but it's and if the ways and places I've taught this, it's really, I think, kind of come alive for people, because it's not that numbers aren't important, but there are other things that are also important. The stories being told in the event, the why of it, and that is a place where in the congregation that I serve, we're really using cultivated ministry a lot in asking. So here's an example: we have somebody who gave a bequeathed some money to the church in a memorial gift. It's kind of sitting there, and one of the things that we've talked about is some kind of outdoor kind of pavilion or gazebo, an outdoor meeting space. And that's been in the water for a really long time. And it's kind of come up again, and somebody mentioned it offhand in a recent session meeting. And we went instantly to what would the liability be? What if it gets vandalized? All really valid concerns, right? But I said, let's take a step back and just ask why we would be doing it. What is the why of this? What does this allow us to do? And cultivated ministry starts with the why of ministry. And a lot of times we think we know what the why is. It seems self-evident. And then when you actually talk about it, you're like, oh, wow, your why is different than my why. And so helping people get clarity on, sorry, my lights just went off here. There we go. They're on a sensor, and I wasn't moving around enough.
We're moving on.
There we go. We got to groove a little more. But getting clear on the why we're doing this provides just a much better foundation that we could then have the kind of what if this goes wrong and what if that goes wrong and what policies do we need and all of that. And so, and it starts there and it goes through other kind of elements of thinking about what we do and the purpose of it and what kind of impact we're trying to have. And so that's another key piece of it. And that's something that, we can go into in more depth, hopefully in the fall. That might be part of what we do together. But it has really helped us get clear, I think. And in a time when life feels very nebulous and we don't know where we're going, there's all the books about the liminal space that we're all living in. And I think this gives us something concrete to start with. And I've really appreciated it
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. What I really appreciate about cultivated ministry. So my first career path was actually in the IT field.
Mm.
And people would often say, well, we just need to think outside the box. And thinking outside the box in the IT field doesn't work.
Right.
Like if it works or it doesn't, right? And so what I appreciate about cultivated ministry that I haven't always seen is often it's like, well, it's not about people. It's not about money. At the end of the day, those are important. And what I liked about cultivated ministry is that it recognized those critical pieces, but also it encouraged, as you said, a broader thinking approach
Exactly.
to doing
That's right.
ministry evaluation. And that was really helpful. Actually, I was sitting there during the event, like running through programs in my head. I'm like, oh shoot, like that's a really
Yeah.
good point. I hadn't looked at it as that way.
Right.
And for me, what it did it is it encouraged not only just a broader look, but a different lens. Like let's take different kind of looks at this program or initiative or whatever. So, well, I
Yeah. Yeah.
appreciate you taking some time to talk this morning. Anything else you want to share
Absolutely.
with our people?
Well, I'm just really excited to be with you in the fall, and it's fun being in the physical location I'm in because I get to come up to Pennsylvania all the time for various things, and I'm slowly marching my way through the presbyteries up there. I've been to Philadelphia, I've been to Beaver Butler, I've been to Erie, so I'm really excited to be with the
Great.
folks with it's the Pittsburgh.
Well, and we are excited to have you. Of so actually, where the retreat is where I am right now, and I can
Oh,
say
great,
unequivocally that that time of year is the nicest time of year because it doesn't
perfect,
rain as much, and but it is normally gorgeous and sunny. So,
perfect.
so we are looking forward to having you and hoping that some of our friends will join for a couple of days of reflection and connection, and getting to know MaryAnn. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
All right.